So good afternoon. So this is going to be an interesting panel. My name is Muddu Sudhakar. My first question is going to I'm going to make a statement here so that it gives you the audience and as well as the panelist. The big thing that I hear these days is not about what you guys are investing, what you're not. And they give an example. And have you guys read Mary Meeker's presentation once a year? She does that, Internet Trends. So you should follow that. I had presented last year, and the new one is coming out this month, May, if you have seen it. So one of the things that she talked about a lot in that presentation is it's a fight between US versus China right now with AI and ML, whatever you want to call it. It's only one. There'll be only one winner, and the second is a second loser. It's not going to be a winner, right? With that, these people are the CIOs. My question to them is, what bets are they making to make US a better country? We all want to make America great again. If you're not here in this country and you don't want to make America great again, get out of this country, I guess, right? So my goal is, what are you guys to do to make America great again? What bets are you making? Starting with you.
Great question. Many of you may know that the graduation rates in the United States for colleges range from 40% to 80% graduation rates. How many of you would buy a car that works 80% of the time? How many of you would go to a restaurant, eat 40% of the food, pay 40% of the money and leave? You wouldn't. So one of the biggest things we're investing time and energy in is to understand why students don't graduate. And then what can we do to intervene and fix that? And as you can imagine, this is not by the masses. You've got to pay attention to every single student because their situation and their reason is different than the person right next to them. So this is thinking about students as consumers, understanding their preferences, issues, problems, and trying to solve them in a lot more real time than ever before. So that's one of the things that we feel will make a substantial difference in the lives of our students and their parents, and indirectly and directly with the United States.
Thank you, Opinder. Keep your answers to only 3 sentences, guys.
All right, Muddu. So to your question, Muddu, from our perspective, there are a couple of things that we're doing as a company. And our focus is the bets that we are making is going to change the game in terms of how technology is propagated across the country. So we are making bets on 5G. We are making bets on some of the networking space. And we, as an IT organization, our focus is how do we make those bets successful through a deep collaboration within the enterprise, which is a pretty broad enterprise across the globe. And how do you take some of that bets and apply it to make the business process really less friction and be able to monetize the products faster?
Thank you.
The motto or the mission of Uber is we ignite opportunity by setting the world in motion. So clearly, our focus area is to disrupt transportation and obviously be the platform for transportation, and in that sense, make life easier for everyone. One of the core values of Uber is also to make big, bold bets, and in that sense, we've expanded from ride-sharing to go to other areas like self-driving cars, VTOLs, which is vertical takeoffs and landings, flying cars, etc. Uber Eats as well, as you mentioned, and a few other bets called new modalities like jumps, bikes and scooters, and they're looking at other things as well. So the idea is to be that platform that for transportation that can give back one core aspect for everyone, which is time, right? So and make lives better.
Okay, I'm going to make my question even more focused. I know your company's made bets. I want to know here what you guys have made bets in last 12 months and how many of that bets that are failed. I want to give me top 3 bets you made that did not work out. Starting with you, sir.
One of the bets we made was with SnapLogic. Didn't work out for personnel reasons, not technology reasons. We switched to Informatica. Another bet we made that worked out very well was Zoom. We were custom number 4, one of the first universities to adopt it. Same thing with Splunk. We made a big investment in Splunk, one of the first university to use it for SEM and for the retention graduation rate problem that I cited earlier.
Okay. So instead of answering the question from a product perspective, let me give you, the 3 or 4 things that we are focused on. So number 1 is obviously security. Given the nature of the products that we build, cybersecurity is number 1 for us. So there's a lot of focus and attention on that. Number 2 is really driving the business process and taking friction out of the business process across the globe. And when we talk about process, it's not just the business or the functional side, but even the process areas in the IT area. So that's the second area that we are very focused on. And the third is monetization of data. How do we take the data that we generate across our design centers all the way into the factory and be able to monetize that to make better decisions, better predictions on the product in terms of the yield, quality, scrap, all that. So there is a lot of attention from IT to really drive that. I started in this company about 1.5 years back with a clear mandate to reimagine IT and then take that platform and help drive business transformation. So the bets that we are making are in these areas. We are working with different kinds of products, both startups as well as mature products. A lot of those bets are starting to pay off. Some of them are still in the maturity stage. And we'll see. Time will tell if all of them have paid off. Some will fail. But that's the nature of the game if you're a CIO.
Can you name which project did not work? Projects. You made some bets that did not work out.
I wouldn't say that there are certain projects that did not work out. There are things that are indicators which might not be as successful, but I'm not going to talk about a product and say this didn't work out right now.
So since I've focused on infrastructure at Uber, which is enterprise infrastructure, we actually have about 540 sites, for example, that we bring up a year, which is almost translating to 1 site a day. So clearly, automation is very, very important for us. So one-click bring up of branch networks, for example. So that's one big bet where we continue to refine and keep improving. Another one, cybersecurity obviously is, since there's so much of IoT at play, how do you get security down to the devices, right? And basically have role-based access evolving to attribute-based access, evolving to behavior-based access, et cetera. In terms of areas where we can continue to focus on, so we've grown really fast, and because of which there's been a lot of decentralization. Things have been built for different countries, regions, et cetera. We are increasing a lot of focus on synergies and efficiencies as we go forward, and that includes standardization of process, tool set, vendors, build versus buy, etc. So that continues to be a focus without taking any specific examples.
Okay, so asking a different question. You guys have been in your roles for, let's say, 2, 3, 4 years, each of you guys. So going back to when you took over as a CIO or head of IT, how many people you had in your organization back then and what you have now? How much it has grown up? Starting with you.
I think the numbers are the same, but universities historically have had different type of caliber of skills. So I think 2/3 of the organization have actually changed since I took over. Okay. And also the mix from employees to contract consultants and contractors have changed that mix as well.
So Muddu, to answer your question, in terms of the number of people by pure count, there is not a whole lot of change. But what has changed is the roles and responsibility, what people used to do yesterday versus what they are doing today. Mm-hmm. It's very prevalent in IT. I mean, there was some use case talked about on help desk, and that goes across the board in IT on how technology is deployed through the IT processes. So those roles are changing. It's very clear that in next couple of years, certain roles will go away. And so you as a CIO better start reskilling those resource pool. Same thing on the business side. We have a project which we call a zero-touch project. It's called Project Manicure, which means, try to drive zero friction in our factories. Try to drive zero friction in our supply chain. And what that will do is drive a tremendous amount of shift on the roles and types of work people do today to what they will do 2 years from now, 5 years from now. So that's how I would characterize it.
Very good.
We've grown pretty significantly. I've been with Uber for about 2 years. And I think, looking at my team, we've probably doubled in 2 years, but that's probably because the company itself has grown way more than that. And again, we try to be very lean, mean, automated. So when you look at staffing ratios, IT staffing ratios, spending ratios, we are way, way, way below averages, right? So sometimes you look at the number and go, "Wait, how are we doing this, right?" But at the same time, when we grow across so many sites, 600, 700 sites, we also want to make sure that we are covered for those regions, to be able to function in a distributed manner. So all of that, but still, I would say, even with that growth, we are performing pretty well with focus on automation and synergies, as I mentioned earlier.
Good. I'm going to shift the topic a little bit. If a vendor comes to you guys and says that I only have a cloud service in any of the 3 multi-cloud vendors or 4, would you still take that service, or would you go back and say I want an on-prem solution, starting with your Uber?
So we actually have a tripod. We call it a tripod, which is an on-prem plus multi-cloud, which is primarily focused on AWS and GCP. We use them for different use cases, and I've actually used Azure in my past life very extensively. I would say it depends, right? So I would want to look at what is it he's coming to me for, what service, how does that operate in that cloud versus how I may have it today versus have I built it, or is it a new service that I'm looking to deploy? So there's a lot of these questions I'd want to understand before determining this cloud is important, or are there other security or legal or privacy aspects involved before making determination if they should be on-prem.
Yep. I think you're right on. So really it doesn't matter where the service is getting hosted at. What really depends on, based on, besides the whole operational aspect around security and regulations and stuff, is it really solving the business problem? Whether it's that business happens to a business of IT or running our factories or running our design centers, but really it comes down to what problem are we trying to solve? And is that solution really fit to that problem? And then we make the decision.
Our philosophy is we just certainly look at SaaS first as a strategy. We don't pay a lot of attention to what service provider the SaaS system's working on, but we've changed that recently. We think about it a little bit more often now because AWS has been raising their prices, which means the vendors are going to raise prices in us, the SaaS vendors. So I think it's interesting because it's something that we're going to have to pay more attention to going forward than in the past. I think the captive audience they have is financially straining for all of us.
And the reason I ask this question is for the audience in the room. This is a TiE conference, it's an entrepreneurs conference. So you heard from 3 experts here. The business value that you create, the problem is more important than whether you do it. So if a customer or a CIO comes to you and say, I want an on-prem solution, he's not your leading adopter. Go find somebody else, right? When you are a 10-year-old company, you can find other things. So as long as you solve a business problem, don't try to solve everybody. Focus on SaaS, focus on the cloud. That is 10 to 15-year-old already. Amazon S3 invented in 2006. So that train has already left the station. So at this point, don't build anything for on-prem, don't do anything for on-prem solutions as an entrepreneur. You're in 2019. Right?
Yep. And it goes down to really the business value. What's the proposition you're trying to sell, to solve? What is the problem that you're trying to address? And how are you going to do that in a cost-effective manner? The economics has to tie out. That's really the game changer. It really doesn't matter whether it's hosted in XYZ cloud or it's software as a service model, what kind of consumption model that you provide. It really comes down to the business value.
Good. I'm going to shift a little bit to developer focus because many of you guys are developers in this organization, starting with Chandra. So question that I have for him is, as you've seen it with various forms today, with the whole CI/CD, Jenkins, you have seen with Terraform, what are the issues that people are facing? Like you guys will have a lot of developers. Uber is a great example of building everything in-house, right? Including your app to everything else. Maybe all the way to you guys, maybe you guys are also building it, buying it. So as you're building all these products in-house, you have all this continuous CI/CD. What issues do you see there that you think you can do it inside? Would you like Uber to do it, develop it inside? Or would you like to buy somebody from the audience here? And if you guys are ready to sell anything, these guys have check right now. We just went IPO. You can buy it.
So I'll just preface this by saying that we tend to be build it inside first mentality, right? So we have about 4,500 microservices, you name it. We have services for that ranging from deployment to observability to cloud management platforms to everything, including our own Slack. But coming back to Muddu's question, I do think there's significant opportunity for the CI/CD and DevOps space. We are probably, in my opinion, we are where cloud was 5 years ago, I think, right? And I think the issues there are, there's always multiple development groups in different organizations. They use their own tools across the CI/CD pipeline. They probably don't talk to each other, so there's cost implications. There's security coverage or exposure as well. So how do you increase, minimize those security exposures and optimize cost by providing flexibility in a way those tools can be deployed and managed? So that's one. And the second thing is across the CI/CD lifecycle, ranging from config management all the way through builds, integration, provisioning, and deployment. How do you track analytics and get intelligent metrics out of it? So you mentioned developers. How do you track developer efficiencies, utilization metrics for developers? How do you track build data in such a way that you quickly go and find out that this is where my build failed, and I can automatically go self-heal that build so that you don't lose time? So these are all challenges that I think continue to exist, and there's significant opportunity out there, in my opinion.
So from our perspective, we try to tend to move more towards buy solution rather than build. And the idea is what I believe is I call the applied innovation. You guys, especially the startups, you guys are innovating very fast. And how do you take that innovation and apply into enterprise is the key. For us, yeah, we have some development. We have an offshore center. We do development like a lot of many IT shops. But I personally believe in applied innovation, be able to take the solutions that you guys are producing and being able to apply that in our environment quick and fast, and then drive the value proposition. So that's how I see that.
I think it depends on the type of company you have, Muddu. We're talking about Federal Express, or you're talking about Uber, Facebook. Technology is your business.
Right.
So you have to have your own developers. You really don't have a choice. But for, I'd say 90% of the CIOs around the United States, that's not important. Having development in-house is not an important thing. We'd rather buy than build. We'd rather have a SaaS than on-premises. We'd rather pay a subscription than even CapEx. So even that philosophy and concept has changed considerably. But you've got to have great tools and you've got to have great service to make it work. The tolerance for low-grade software, low-grade services is diminishing.
And to add to what Opinder said, I think you got to step back and see what's the business of IT. If, as a CIO, if you're just in the business of IT, you're in the wrong business. You are essentially in the business of making the best product, getting that out to the customer in the right time when they need it, building those products at the right cost level with the right yield and margins. That's what you're in the business of. As an IT organization, you're helping drive that. And when you start to look at IT from that lens, all these answers start to skew, they start to shift, because more just a development shop, just a shop in the background trying to crank the shaft. It's a very different paradigm.
Okay, I'm going to increase the speed now. So I like that answer, right? So that means you're an entrepreneur, you guys can sell to them. How much money have you bet on startup in the last 12 months? How much will you bet in next 12 months? Quick answer.
I'd say about 5% to 10% of our budget is.
Give us a dollar number. These guys are ready. They only care for money here.
I'd say about 22 million a year approximately.
So, Muddu, I'm not going to give you the dollar number, but I can say we have skewed our investment to innovation, to smaller companies, because we believe that the value proposition is huge from these smaller companies, especially in our context, where when I started, we had a clean slate for IT. And so what we are trying to do is drive a lot more innovation, a lot more startup companies to come in and get those products adopted.
Thank you. We need to...
I'd say not much, but we are looking at specific use cases. I'll give one example.
Is it zero?
No, it's not zero for sure. So, for example, we are doing a global implementation of SailPoint for identity and access management, right? And because we've actually had a bunch of in-house built solutions, and in some cases duplicate solutions that do the same thing. I just use that as an example, saying
You should talk to Opinder offline. He didn't like that comment.
Yeah, we'll talk about it for sure. But the point is, yes, we are starting to look at buy decisions, and when you look at buy decisions,
okay, let me ask, how much will you invest next 12 months for the audience? How much check will you write?
I can't give you a number. Maybe we can discuss it offline.
Okay. So next question. Are you guys consider yourself to be a legacy CIO or a CDO? The comment is, are you guys investing on new projects or legacy? How much is split between new and legacy?
80% is new, 20% is legacy.
I think very similar. A lot of focus on the new stuff. Keeping the lights on is very commodity, and we are trying to drive the cost down on that.
Yeah, I'd say 90+% new.
Awesome. Does CISOs work for you?
Yes.
Yes.
No, by the way, just to clarify, I run an enterprise infrastructure. I'm not the CIO of Uber, but the CISO does not work for the CIO.
Yeah, so that's something is another topic panel for separately CIO and CISO. I actually talk since CISO should not be reporting to CIO. No offense to these guys, they should report to risk and separately. So, like if you have 2 kids, how many people have kids? You have to invest in both legacy and CISO. So security is by itself a separate project. Most honest CISO is going to split away from CIO. So that's a separate topic of discussion. The next set of questions. How much time we have? 1 minute. If you have to pick 3 vendors or 3 areas of projects, what would be that you want to invest next 12 months?
Security and artificial intelligence are probably most likely.
Security, number 1. Number 2 is around business process automation through AI, ML, some kind of robotic process automation. That would be number 2. Number 3 is data. How do you get the data architected right and drive value out of the data?
Yeah, I'd actually combine both of them and say integrating automation into security and AI.
Good choice.
Audience questions now. Fast track.
So quick question on strategy. I mean, when everything is changing in the world, how do you prioritize yourself and your team? And then a related question that's personal. We have a bunch of Teslas. Should we give them up and focus on Uber? What do you think of the whole auto drive thing?
So the prioritization, yes, we do half-yearly cycles for prioritizing key business projects that solve 4 different themes, which is growth, employee productivity, security and excellence, and operational excellence. So we actually have security and compliance and operational excellence. And based on that, we define really good KPIs for them to say, where are we going to take, where would this project take the company from and to? And based on that, roughly give or take about 50 to 100 projects in every 6 months. And we do evaluate the priority during that phase as well, but that's a general...
Thank you, Chandra. We'll go to the next question.
I'll skip the second part of it. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Go ahead. Somebody with the mic, please.
Yes, hi. To the panel, whoever wants to take it.
Only one person takes it. You can
Okay.
choose.
Pranab.
Yep.
So obviously the negative consequences for breaches of sensitive information are huge, which makes you want to keep your data secure, but employees want to work from home. They want to use Box and Dropbox and Slack. You want to leverage offshore manufacturing, which all require you to share data. How do you reconcile those two?
Really great point here, because collaboration and security are kind of on the opposite side of the spectrum. And so what you need to do is make sure that you don't stifle the innovation by stifling collaboration. And when I talk collaboration, it's internal collaboration within the enterprise and outside with your customers, partners, your manufacturing shops. And then at the same time, making sure that your key IP is protected. So you got to really prioritize where the value drivers are. What are the top things that you need to first focus on from security perspective? Have the right guardrails around that, but at the same time, not stifle the innovation. That's very important.
Okay, next question, sir. Anybody in the audience?
Hi, this question is for Chandra. Chandra, as the panel topic point is taking risks, how do you create a culture of risk-taking and collaboration and reduce friction amongst your employees so that they, have the courage to take on new projects and do things that are innovative so that Uber can continue to be at the forefront of its industry of what it's doing?
Yeah, great question. So as I mentioned earlier, one of our core values is big, bold bets. And the way we focus on 2 things, innovation, speed, but also very highly encourage experimentation and to fail fast, right? So basically it's about find a use case, get some data, get insights out of the data, and make decisions based on that. And then if that works, scale. If not, move to the next one. Right? So fail fast is highly encouraged.
Yes, quick question. So anyone of you can take this, but GDPR, it's been enforced about a year now. So what impact has that been?
Only one person. Who wants to take it? Opinder, I'll give it to you.
So we look at GDPR in California 2020, which is the other rule, and we think privacy is going to become inherent. It's got to be part of the DNA. So we're not just thinking about GDPR, we're thinking about privacy in general. So how do we track the preferences for every individual in the organization, whether it's a student or employee. And we're architecting a system, a solution to think through how do we do that? How do we store the information and be able to be compliant with the actual compliance laws?
All right, I got to end it. If any one
Hi,
quick final
this
question.
is Raj here. Anyone in the panel can answer this question. So, from a risk perspective, does like a 10-person startup, which is do they need to have any certification needs, which you think sets a minimum bar? Then only they can even enter your enterprise, whether it's a Uber or it doesn't matter which company it is.
No.
Thank you.
So it really doesn't matter the size of the company. What we look for is the value proposition, and then what kind of backing is there. Because obviously, there has to be some kind of financial viability to that firm that we're trying to bring in. So we look at, obviously the form, fit, and function in our environment, in our context, the people who are backing it, and the financial viability.
So that tells you a final comment on that. Go get VC money. There are a lot of VCs here in this conference. VCs gives you money, these guys will give the check. So go to VCs first. Thank you, folks. Hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, man. That was fast.